Good afternoon. Welcome to my blog. Today I'm going to be interviewing my mentor teacher. Her name is Miss Adams. Miss Adams, I have some questions for you, and we're going to go ahead and start. What type of ELLs do you have in the classroom, and what challenges do they face?
In our classroom, we have several different types of ELL. We have beginners, we have intermediates, and we have advanced. Our beginning students are those who some of them can pretty much speak English, and you can tell that they struggle between switching between English and Spanish. And then our beginners are usually those who have a hard time reading in English. And so that's definitely one of the main challenges they face, even though we're in the math classroom. Our beginners, they struggle with basically the concepts of transferring from Spanish to English and then from English to written English. And so with our intermediates, those are the ones who are more so in the middle. So they basically got in the concept of like their high frequency words and the concepts that we have to go over. And so those are more so the students who have been in the school system for a while. And so they've gone, through kinder and first grade. And so they're starting to catch on. And then you have our advanced students who you can't even notice that they're ELL students anymore because they're right on level with the rest of the kids. And so we have those three different kinds: our beginner, our intermediate, and then our advanced. And basically their challenges are dependent upon what step of the ladder they're on. And yes.
Okay. So do you enjoy working with the ELLs, and why?
Absolutely, because one of the greatest things about seeing our ELL students is their growth. Because you start off with kids who sometimes don't speak any English at all, and then you have to sit there and work with them so that they can learn basically their content level and then everything that they've missed but prior to that. Like sometimes you get kids in your classroom who are, for example, when I was teaching third grade, I had a student who was coming straight from Mexico, had never been in the school before in English, and she was in my third grade reading classroom. So I had to meet her where she was. Like I had to start from the very beginning, teaching her phonetics, teaching her how to read. And so seeing them grow from knowing as little as they do, or sometimes they're on level, so that's a good thing as well. But for those who start like freshly in English, the best part about it is seeing them grow, especially when they're grown in reading and they're grown in math. That's the best feeling, and that's why I feel like that's why I enjoy it, to see the growth.
Yeah, that's good. What advice do you have for other or future teachers of ELL?
Ooh, that's a good one. So patience for sure, because we are quick to teach our lessons because we're so used to our kids we're in the mind frame that our kids are supposed to know these things. However, they're going to come to us and they're going to have gaps, just like people who don't speak English as their first language. So with that, I would say patience, because of the fact that I'm trying to think of a word. For example, if I say decompose, or if I say add, or if I say any math vocabulary word, I'm going to have to break that down to them, because they might not have experience with using that word, or they might have a different understanding of the word, because not all words are going to have one meaning. That's those multiple meaning words. And so patience for sure, like being willing and able to, hey, I noticed that they're struggling with this. Maybe it's because they don't know the difference between a digit and a number. And so patience for one. The second thing that I would say that's important to have are for new teachers for sure, small groups, because they might not be able to focus whole group, because you have to move at a certain rate in order to make sure that the lesson cycle is flowing. And so pulling them in small groups to make sure that they're receiving the instruction and the intervention that they need, that I would recommend as well. So patience, small group, and vocabulary cards. So I know, particularly if you're working with younger grades, you want to make sure that you label your classroom with vocabulary, whether that's labeling the tables as tables, labeling the things on the wall, the cabinets as cabinets, whether it's having a word wall, whether it's them seeing their name in print, whether it's seeing the job titles. Like, there needs to be vocabulary everywhere, because the more they see it, the more they're going to learn. And so I would definitely recommend that as well.
That's good. What approach or methods do you use in your classroom?
And so vocabulary for sure, like labeling everything, having everything visual, because that's one way that some kids learn is visually. I also recommend that when you're teaching, always have, when possible, like pictures of things. So if you're talking about the sun, but they don't know what the sun is, like, you're gonna have to figure out a way to get them to know that. And either you need to take them outside and show them the sun, or you need to have a real picture of the sun. And when I say real picture, the reason I say that is because oftentimes teachers want to use the little fancy pictures, like the shapes that are smiling at you, or like the sun that's got the sunglasses on, but that's not realistic. So they need to know exactly what it's supposed to look like. So you need to show them like actual photographs of these things. And so pictures for sure. And then in math class in particular, I would say manipulatives, like our base 10 blocks, our coins, things like that, because it's tangible. It's something that they can touch. It's something that they can connect with. And so that helps them to understand the concepts better. Because if you're saying 100, but they don't get a concept of what 100 looks like, they're never going to be able to catch on to that. So first, the vocabulary for sure.
Teachers, if you have Cortland flowers, please send that student to the front office to go home. All other scholars should either be in a reading classroom or in high frequency. If you are not in a class, you should be sitting in the front. There should be no children walking our campus at this time. Cortland Flowers' family is here to pick her up. If you have her, please send her to the front. Thank you. Ms. Lewis, please send one student to the main office. Thank you.
All right, so pictures, the manipulatives, and then I would say anchor charts, because anchor charts are basically where we anchor our learning. And so when you have those hanging around the class, like even if it's a concept that you went over before, when you go back to it, or not when you go back to it, but if you ever go back to a lesson, let's say we did expanded form at the beginning of August.
Ms. Thompson, please come to the office. Ms. Thompson, please come to the office.
Let's say that you did expanded form at the beginning of August.
Myra Jackson, please come to the office.
Let's say you did expanded form at the beginning of the school year. If you keep that anchor chart on the wall, then that student is always going to have something to look back at, just in case expanded form comes back up, because it probably is. And so having anchor charts where they can always reference and look at, I would recommend that as well.
So why did you choose to use these strategies, and how effective are they in your classroom helping students?
So, I mean, those in particular, those are what have worked for me. So I noticed, like, when I'm teaching my lessons, that some of the kids are looking at those anchor charts. And so I would definitely recommend that, because clearly, like, the fact that they're looking at them shows that they're useful. The vocabulary I do, because I feel like that's the same thing. They get to look and they get to see and they get to learn. They learn what the letters look like. They learn what the words sound like, so they can look at the phonetics of the words and things like that. And then with the manipulatives, I know for sure that helps, because even when I don't have the manipulatives out sometimes, the kids will ask for them. And that's perfectly fine with me. Like, whatever a child needs to learn, especially our ELLs, we want to make sure that we give them what they...
Pardon this interruption. Wesley York, please report to the main office. Wesley York, please report to the main office.
We need to make sure that we're giving them what they need in order to be successful. So those I have proven to be useful in my classroom, and so that's why I use them.
What alternative authentic assessments do you use with the students?
Oh, that's a good one too. So one thing that I noticed is sometimes teachers are always focused on giving kids like pen and paper, but pen and paper is not going to work for everybody. Not everybody learns the same way. Not everybody operates the same way, even as adults. And so one thing that I know is that some kids, when they struggle with reading, it doesn't necessarily mean that they struggle with math. And so sometimes that just means when you're giving them their assessments that you need to be verbal with them. So you need to read their assessment to them. If it has to be pencil and paper, then reading them to them. But beyond that, it's also a matter of giving them authentic, like, scenarios. So if you're sitting here trying to tell them about something they don't know about, then they're not going to too much learn about it. And what I mean by that is, if I give them a scenario that says, we got to school at 7:30. We leave school at 3:10. How much time are we at school? That's something realistic and authentic that they can tangibly, like, that they can basically that they know. It's something that they have experienced. And so that's a key point of making sure that when you are assessing them, you're not asking them about stuff that they cannot relate to. And even if you are, you need to make sure that you're giving them the background knowledge of what you're testing them on. I also like to do a lot of project-based learning. And so that's just a matter of, if we're working on shapes, instead of having them do a matching page where they're matching the word circle to the shape of the circle. No, we're going to walk around the school and we're going to find some circles and we're going to draw those circles. We're going to take pictures of those circles. To me, that's more authentic, and that shows me for sure that they know exactly what it is that they're doing. You have to provide them with real life experiences.
Okay. And our last question, do these assessments provide accurate information about the student's knowledge and skills than the high stakes test?
I would say they do. They do provide them with the skills that they need for the high stakes test, and sometimes even better than the high stakes test, because if you keep in mind, the test, like I said, is pencil and paper, and so it's not very authentic. Like, it's not a true assessment of what the kids are and are not able to do, because if a kid falls asleep during the test and they miss half the test, that's not a true authentic assessment of what they're able to do. But if you were to take the kid and you were to tell them to apply what they know some kind of way, like, let's say we're learning about addition and y'all are having a classroom party, tell them, so y'all have this many pieces of candy, but I need to take away so many pieces of candy for my other class. How many pieces of candy are y'all gonna have left? Like, that's more authentic than having them sit there write on a piece of paper. So I feel like the assessments that I use, like the project-based learning, and the real life problems, I feel like those are more beneficial than the high stakes test sometimes. Yes.
Well, thank you, Ms. Adams, for letting me interview you.
No problem.